good evening, everyone. As in each webinar, I have a privilege of welcoming you all and thanking you for joining us tonight in the 5th webinar from the cycle Sound and Music in Child Development. The webinars are the part of the project BAIR, Art Infinity Radio, creating sound art for babies, toddlers, and vulnerable groups, which is co-funded by the Creative Europe program of the European Union. Tonight, we are opening the new topic, listening and responses to sound and music in the earliest childhood. We will learn about the development of auditory perception and active listening of very young children from Professor Dr. Katarina Zadnik. I have a pleasure of introducing briefly a rich and wonderful biography of our host tonight. Katarina Zadnik is an assistant professor of the Department of Music Education at the Academy of Music, University of Ljubljana, and she specialized in didactics of music education and music specialist future teacher learning. She worked as a teacher of music theory and at the music school, and also she taught music as a subject in a gymnasium. As a mentor, she cooperated in many projects. The development of Montessori materials for their usage by subject music theory in music school, then the application of Alfred A. Tomatis method in music school, batch flower dances and their application in music school. And on the basis of two such projects, Music Hours for the Babies, which dated from 2014, and Music House for the Youngest from 2015, she devised a chosen subject, music in the earliest childhood. And her research findings are presented in the national and international conferences, symposia, and published in monographies and music educational journals. So, Katarina Zadnik is our host tonight, and I'm very happy to offer you the Zoom floor, dear Katarina.
So hello to everyone. First, I would like to thank you, Sunčica, for this wonderful introduction and presentation of today's new topic, which starts with our 5th webinar. So, as Sunčica already mentioned, I will present today listening and responses to sound and music in the earliest childhood. Especially, I will highlight the developmental specifics of child's responses to sound and music up to the 3rd year of life. Then I will try to explain the difference between hearing and listening, especially how to encourage the auditory perception and active listening in this life period. I will try to focus mainly on our musical activities in music educational settings, and I will try to connect these, let's say, informations with our results of 2 projects, which were implemented in 2014 and 2015 at the Academy of Music in Ljubljana. So now I will share my screen and my presentation. So listening and responses to sound and music. Let me start with the auditory system in the prenatal period, how this system develops during this time. So the organ of Corti as a core component of cochlea and the receptor organ of hearing and as well as balance is located in our inner ear, actually in one of these 3 ventricles you can see on the picture below. And in the 4th week, 24 week of pregnancy, this auditory system organ is already developed. the fetus begins to respond to sound very soon, around the 28th of week. And let's say mainly obstetricians and gynecologists made some experiment. How does a fetus respond to this sound stimulus, which reaches him through mother's bones and, let's say, also muscles as a vibration. And they found out that the fetus heart rate mainly accelerated or decelerated, or fetus also stayed, let's say, physically standstill. Mainly pregnant mother can feel this kind of responses, especially when fetus kick their abdomen. So we can see that the first musical experiences actually start with the perception of sound and music in our womb and in the mother's womb. That means that fetus already can remember the sound images and learn from them, because if mother listens to some kind of musical examples, fetus also can recognize the same musical, let's say, examples or patterns, and fetus can learn. This means that music education, according to the Hungarian composer Zoltán Kodály, should start 9 months before the birth. So the birth, it's our yes. So at the birth and until the first year, we can see that a child, newborns, start immediately responding to the sound stimulus and music. And at the birth, oral organ is the most developed sense. It detects the pitch, volume, tone, rhythmic structure of human and as well as human speech. And how newborns react to the sounds. Actually, they start to turn their head toward the sound source. And they also can recognize sound or music content from the prenatal period. This means if mother listens to some kind of musical examples, newborn will recognize the same musical pieces. During the third and sixth month, the spontaneously movement responses emerge, and actually these movements are not congruent to the music tempo or, let's say, meter. So this is actually, we can say that baby move their arms and legs, which is a sign that they perceive and store new sound patterns. Let me share with you one of my experiences when my twins nephew were born. They were actually premature infants. And they really had problems and difficulties with the position of their head in the middle, or let's say when they turn their body from right to left and opposite, and they feel a lot of painfulness. That's why we decided with her mother that we will combine the, let's say, music and these body exercises with these exercises, and really music helps to overcome this, let's say, physical painful with little babies. And what we also observed was when we listened to the same musical pieces, they really were being physical rest, and when the new pattern, musical pattern, occurs for them, they started to move, and this was actually a sign that they perceived and stored new sound patterns. Similar results were seen during my first experiences in the society natural beginnings, where I also implemented such as, let's say, music lessons for mothers and little babies up to 3 years old. Soon after, the motor responses, the vocal responses are merged, and this occurs in the third month. Actually, babbling phase begins at that time, and this is preparation for speech development as well as singing. And some of authors distinguish between non-musical babbling as well as musical babbling. So non-musical babbling is maybe connected to rhythmical syllabic sequences, while music babbling captures sounds of different pitches. They are rhythmically and diatonically, let's say, disorganized. So babbling is mainly connected with, let's say, ba 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 ba, ga 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 ga. But opposite, musical babbling also, let's say, involve some different sounds, heights, tone heights, glissando, like ooh, ba ba ba, and so on. And this is in great progress between 6th and the 7th month. We are talking about vocalization. It's a period of a child's vocal play in which children use their voice as a favorite toy. Actually, a child discovers the heights of own voice, and a child imitates the sounds of their environment. And we can see that a child really enjoy in this a process. He shows obvious signs of fierceness and joy. So child many times repeats short melodic phrases within small inaccurate intervals with a little number of syllables. And some studies highlight that the existence of universal melodic motif within the a minor third, and we can see that this minor third is also many times a part of folk songs as well as auditorial songs, children's songs. For example, one of these patterns we can hear like na 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 na. It's very often involved in child singing as well. So vocalization is characteristic up to the 2nd year of age, and it reaches its peak in a year and a half. So vocalization as such is a basis for singing as well as verbal communication. It's really an important part of child development. So singing is an important musical achievement after the age of 2. So what is going on after this age? Let me explain in the next slide. So the singing is a fundamental activity in the entire preschool period. In this period, the child establishes with singing musical communication, interaction in a social group, as well as he learns musical language. And let me point out here that two different kinds of singing we can observe during this period. First, we can talk about the creative singing, which is connected to the spontaneously and naturally making up the child's own songs. This means that child take one syllable or one word due to his in a great speech development is in a great progress, and word he takes one word, and on this word, or let's say syllable, he makes up own melody. At the age of 4, performing of already known songs are we can observe. It is emerged, and we can see that the child is already able to sing folk songs, or let's say authorial songs. These are songs which can be heard in his environment. But let me explain one really important intermediate, let's say, level, because in this period, a child starts to sing, let's say, one new song for him, and suddenly he skips to, let's say, a part when he starts to imagine, to make up his own melodies. Maybe he will take one melodic phrase out of this known song, and he will start to make up his own song. And suddenly he will return to this song, and he will sing a known song to the end. So it's like mixed singing or combination of creative singing and singing of well-known songs. In the age of 3 and 4, we can see, due to the fact that children start to sing folk songs, authorial songs, singing is not yet precise in the rhythmical, metrical areas, as well as in the intonation. And this is connected to the undeveloped vocal apparatus and vocal range, since the child's natural speaking, or let's say singing position, is around F1 or G1. But if we observe child while the adult is singing, he really enjoys to listen to the adult, and he expresses also a wish for singing repetition. So babies attaches the first contact with music in her family environment. This means that music learning is let's say initiated in home family environment. And babies can recognize mother's voice very soon after the 4th month, and they really enjoy in the voice, or in the mother's voice, or let's say timbre of her voice. Mother actually represents, her voice represents a fundamental communication between her and the baby. And we are talking about, let's say, some kind of musical speech. It is a combination of, let's say, speech and singing. And mother with different frequencies of sounds, tones, and with natural speech rhythm makes communication with her baby. And this communication starts immediately after birth. So from mother point of view, we could say that this kind of musical communication with the child is actually an instinctive need of an adult, that they want subconsciously to involve a child into their cultural environment. And from the let's say, baby's point of view. At the birth, the natural process of acculturation is activated, in which child absorbs the musical culture of own cultural environment. So we can see that this proto-conversation is in a great, let's say, progress, and mother also tries to translate the baby's, let's say, vocal expressions, and she tries to translate it to the words. So we can see that communication in this period is mainly established through sound and music. Now, I will show you one video. You can also access to this video on this link below. And in this video, you will see how 3-month-old baby girl wants to imitate mother singing. She really loves to hear her singing, and you will see how a girl wants to articulate with her mouth how she would like to sing a song. She even, let's say, imitates mother voice and timbre of voice and so on. So we could see how this little baby really enjoys in mother singing, and how this baby immediately starts to react on sound, on music. And from a baby's point of view, or let's say from a child's point of view, singing is the first music for a child. So musical experience through adult singing have a strong impact in the earliest period of life. And studies also confirm that through singing, we as an adult assess our positive or, let's say, negative experience in music education. So for all of us who deals with music education, we really have to respect this finding. So we have to be aware of the importance of the qualitatively and appropriate selection of songs regarding to the child's musical development, as well as the aesthetically expressively singing of an adult. Especially little children really like to listen to our interpretation. So through the interpretation, how we sing the song, how we use different dynamics or tempo and so on, they really are impressed, and through singing they let's say perceive the sound and music at the emotional level. So the affective domain, they perceive this music, and this is actually then the starting point for them, that they will start to communicate with us, or maybe they will not will be let's say prepared to engage in our activity. And this is actually the most important knowing for all of us, which is connected to the entire let's say preschool period. In the home environment, we can also encounter to some other activities. In home environment, finger games are often involved in these, let's say, musical activities. And finger games are extremely important, especially in the first month of life, but we can also play these finger games during the entire, let's say, preschool period. Finger games are unique and interesting movement games, and they represent important communication between an adult and a baby. In Slovenia, we also called these finger games vibarije, and biba This, let's say, could be an object or animal or little insect or snake, I don't know what, but mainly we present this biba with index finger and middle finger, which travels through baby's body, his legs or arms, belly, and so on. And the central element is the metrically organized text pronounced by the adult, as well as the element of movement implemented as well by an adult. This runs in combination, together in alignment. So with this kind of activity, we encourage the development of different senses, like sight, hearing, touch, as well as smell. We can encourage motoric development, especially this development is encouraged by older children as they started to imitate our, let's say, movements. Then development of the attention while a child listens to us, observe what we are doing, and so on. Speech development, because a child listens to the pronounced text. And social development is also encouraged through mother's touch. And the closeness and security is in that in such a way created for little ones, which are really important factors in the social development in this period. So now I invite you to take a look of one finger game, which runs between a mother and little baby, and it is available on this link. So we could see how mother plays with a little baby, and mainly this kind of plays are seen during the nursing time when baby lies at the table, nursing table. A mother tries to connect communication with this baby. There is an eye-to-eye connection. So these are really the most important activities in this time period. Due to the sensorimotor stage from birth to the age of 2, since a little baby learns through the different senses. So we can see that the most important factor in music learning, let's say music learning, is played by an adult. Through, let's say, mother's pronounced text and mother's touch, a child perceives a musical rhythm and meter. And children perceive and accept sounds and musical patterns through oral as well as tactile perception. So children's attention and perception is gradually directed from sensorial to cognitive learning process. So with this kind of activity, especially with movement games, we incentive rhythmical development from the musical point of view. So rhythm as musical pre-element is then our starting point and the basis to develop all other musical potential in children. So many times music education starts within the rhythmical scopes. So rhythm is, let's say, a starting point and is a bridge to other musical activities and a bridge to the development of other musical pitches. And now I will focus to our two projects, which was were implemented in 2014. This was a project Music as a Factor of Children's Development in the Preschool Period. It was implemented and prepared by Music Education Department at the Academy of Music in Ljubljana in cooperation with the private music school, ARSEM. And then the second theme was actually the upgrade of the first project. It was prepared by the Music Education Department of the Academy of Music in Ljubljana as well. Then Preschool Education Department, the Faculty of Education, in cooperation with the ARSEM Music School and kindergartens from which in Ljubljana. So each of these projects lasted for 6 months, and these music programs were dedicated for the children up to 3 years old and their parents. So our main purpose was to actively involve families into performing of musical activities, and music lessons lasted for 60 minutes, and they were carried out by our 3 students, let's say mentors. So maybe I would like to point out that our most outstanding difference between these 2 projects was that in the second project we included the non-musical element puppet mouse as a motivational incentive, which was actually linked between children and musical activities. And every lesson started and ended with a song, Little Mouse, which was actually connected with this puppet. And mainly children said that they will visit little puppet and not music lessons. So what was our objectives? We tried to encourage the active making of music by parents, and parents were actually a link between musical activities and their children. Actually, our students encouraged parents that they encouraged their children that they start to participate in the planned activities. Then we try to awake and stimulate joy and enthusiasm for music in children. We try to encourage auditory perception, sensibility, and attention to sound as well as music. And finally, we tried to encourage and influence on the rise of singing activity in the child's home environment. This was really one of the main objectives for us. So you can see our little puppet mouse on this picture with our student Clara, who implemented these kind of activities. She was one of the students. So what was our musical activities which were involved in these music classes? So first we tried to encourage children's involvement into musical activities with performing. We tried to implement, actually we implemented different finger games, children's songs, music didactic games. Then in the scope of listening, we listened to different musical examples of different musical styles and the different, let's say, musical timbres as well. In the scope of creating, we exploring and playing different instruments, and we also included movement, dance, expression. So through all of these activities, we try to stimulate auditory perception, sensitivity, and sensibility with our children. So with our, due to the fact that all of these musical activities or the incentive in the encouragement of the development of auditory perception and active listening, I will mainly point out two musical activities: music didactic games and musical activity listening to music. So first, let me explain what is the difference between hearing and listening. Hearing is actually a physiological process of perceiving sounds with the auditory organ. And of course, if our auditory organ is damaged, then we will have difficulties in, let's say, to develop the auditory perception. But if we are healthy, hearing is actually a prerequisite for listening. Listening is a mental dynamic activity of directing attention and attributing meaning to heard information. And listening depends on several, let's say, factors. First, on our willingness to listen. That means that we listen when we are ready to focus on the sounds, otherwise we only hear. Then second, it is about that we consciously directing our energy into sound and music, and this means that we try to maintain concentration during listening, and we are listening with some kind of focus. Then musical memory is also one of the most important, let's say, factors here, because memory enables us to remember what has been heard. And also listening is influenced by emotions, our emotions and prejudice. In this life period, listening runs at the level of intuition. That's why it's so much important that we develop the skill of listening. And how we encourage this, I will present you a bit later. Maybe let me explain what is the difference between musical didactic games and child's play. So if we are observing children while playing, we can see how they enjoy, and they really enjoy in the process. The process has a value in itself, and children do not play because of one goal. No, they are just playing. The process is in focus, and a child's play has a deep meaning in this preschool age. Actually, it has a great impact on child's holistic development, such as cognitive development, social, emotional, as well as motor and personal development. It is also a powerful tool for education. And why? Because children through games acquire different knowledge, enriches their experience, and develop skills, abilities, and also habits. That's why music didactic games are also one of the most important, let's say, musical activities. But let me say that these are, let's say, secondary musical activities in our music education. The difference is that music didactic games, the difference between music didactic game and child's play is that music didactic game is always planned and structured and goal-oriented. So this means every time we have goal in front of us, and the most important element is music, is sound. Then a child needs to know what are the tasks, and he can achieve these goals with other partners, with their peers. So music didactic games has a great educational value, especially in promoting musical development and maintaining interest in music. So with music didactic games, children actually play. They play and they even don't know that they achieve some new, let's say, musical skills or abilities. So let me say that we know really several types of music didactic games, but mainly we chose the didactic games with the goal of development of auditory perception and attention to sound. It is really important how do we implement those games with little children. So I will discuss now about didactic approach, how we implemented those activities. First, we try to awake the child's attention to sound with different motivational incentives like fairy tales, puppets, objects, and so on. Then, during the activity, we try to maintain, first, we try to encourage that a child became aware of the sound, and during the process, we try to maintaining his attention to sound, and we try to gain this through the systematically directed the child's attention to the sound. Since the sound cannot be seen, we know that music is actually an art which runs in a time. We cannot see it, we cannot feel it, we cannot grab it, and so on. This means that it's so much more important for a child that he connects the heard sound to the visual part and also tactile part. This means that every time we try to connect the heard sound with the object, the instrument, which actually was the source of the sound, and after we try to encourage the children that they touch the sound, they try to play, and in this let's say activity they have the opportunity to connect the previous heard sound to the sound which was heard by playing the instrument. So in this relation of these three senses, hearing, sight, and touch, the new knowledge is established, or actually was established. And we are in the music education settings, we every time talking about integrated knowledge. Why? Because our knowledge, musical knowledge, is a combination of musical image of sound in our inner hearing and semantic knowledge of providing a meaning to what has been heard. So on one side, we have to hear inside us how these sounds sound like, or let's say instruments, and on the other side, I must know how do I name this instrument. So musical images and knowledge can be established and stored in musical memory just in this, let's say, a connection. And this is actually the most important factor for further music education as well. Child actively engaging actually will enhance a musical learning on the basis of sensory as well as motor process. And this is a suitable approach for the sensorimotor stage, as a child learns by doing. I will continue with listening, with musical activity listening. Due to the fact that music is present in our everyday reality, we often do not pay attention to sound. Actually, music is like sound behind the scenes. And that's why our main goal within the music education setting is to raise the active listener. This means that we try to plan the needs and habit of listening to music in preschool age, which as such will also appear in a later life. And to active listener, to activate active listener means that listening needs to be learned. Mainly, the attention to sound has extremely important role. Attention to sound means that I'm able to focus on the sound, that I'm able to discover something in the music, or I'm able to follow in the music in some element, or I'm able to shift my attention from one element to another. And this active listening, let's say focused listening, is gradually developed. Since this ability requires different skills such as auditory perception, attention to sound and music, and providing a meaning to what has been done. I have to stress here that in this life period, the active listening is just initiated, and active listening we have to, let's say, develop for longer time period. It is a skill which needs to be developed in longer time period, actually also in primary school, in gymnasium, and so on. So what about listening in the earliest life? Listening, as I mentioned it before, runs on the intuitive level, and it is a covered behavior. It is not observable to others, and actually each of us listen to the music in our own way. It is, as Kratos say, it's really a creative activity. Due to the fact that listening is not observable to us, we need to find ways, or let's say didactic approaches to support and enhance a child's expression of aesthetic experiences and mental processes during listening. And the most used didactic approach in the area of listening is experiential listening to music, for which a child expresses diverse moods and emotional responses to the listened music. Since the movement is our first response to sound, and regarding the child's motor skill development, the body movement and dance activity are the most suitable approaches to express a child's experiences through listening. So in our little music classes in 2015, we mainly connected music listening to motor and dancing activities. Every time we really had paid attention to selection of the time short examples, since a child's ability of listening to music is time restricted. They cannot hear musical examples for longer time. This is actually for them really demanding. So the goals of listening were that child directed his attention to music, shifting the attention within the music from one to another element. So now I will explain and present you some other results of our project. So mainly the responses showed up the social affective domain and psychomotor domain. The affective domain, we found some similarities according to the Colville taxonomy, and up to 1 year we see that awareness of a sound stimuli emerged. Between the first and the second year, willingness of receiving music and musical activities emerged. And selective attention emerged between the second and the third year. Actually, children wished for a repetition. They really enjoy exploring and trying out the musical instruments of the different instruments of interest and attention. To the motoric domain, we also came to the similar conclusions as the Simpson taxonomy. Large body movements occurred up to 1 year old, and kicking, children kicking with their feet, bouncing in the parent's lap, while movements of more parts of body emerged between first and the second year. Actually, we saw that children tried to sway themselves to right, to left, and between the second and the third year, simultaneous movement of several body parts emerged. At the social domain, we especially observe the social skill of sharing musical instruments with other children, and the ability of empathy also was initiated. Then the communication was established at the levels of child-mentor relationship, child-parent relationship, child-child relationship. It was the most popular musical activity between among parents and children, singing. Singing, actually, parents and children enjoyed taking part in singing most. And children really liked to listen to their parents singing. They wanted the repetitions. They even applauded at the end of singing. And the main result was the safe, stimulating musical environment. So this is one of really important, let's say, factors which was created by parents. Actually, parents with their actively involvement in musical activities created a stimulating and safe environment for their children. And results also indicated that a higher level of children's positive responses in the affective domain showed up when activities were carried out by their parents as compared to students. Then plant and structure activities. This was also one of the important factor in our music lessons. With plant and structured activities, children really feel, let's say, safe. They feel safe, and they really were more. Their responses were higher than usual, and we find out how important it is for this child that we also repeat those musical activities. With this repetition, actually, child know what will follow in the activity and what the task demands for them. And our, let's say, objective was also achieved in line with the key objective of the project. This is that musical activities in the home environment was also implemented. That means that the activities carried out during music classes encourage and influence music activities in the family environment, and parents also reported that they started singing new songs that they heard and learned in our music classes at home as well. And this is really, let's say, one inspired finding for us, result for us, because we can see that singing and other, let's say, activities nowadays really are let's say, vanished out of our homes due to the, let's say, due to the presence of ICT tools in our homes, like computers, TVs, and so on. So today I really exposed many, let's say, different factors, which are maybe for us are small, but for a little child they're really important. So as a child is in a great progress in his holistic development, the important factor in this activity is played by a parent, by the adult. Actually, the adult is a role model for a child and plays the main role in creating safe and stimulating music environment with the appropriate selection of various musical activities and contents in the earliest childhood education. So thank you. This is my lecture, and now I will try to let's say, answer on your questions. Maybe it's something here. Okay. Okay. Anna Verbashki asked, at what age children should start the clapping and stomping games? When do they develop their skills in order to be more precise and coordinate hands and feet? So yes, Anna, this is really a skill which is developed in a longer time period. So we cannot say at the age of 4, at the age of 5. But let me stress here that motoric skills actually are in a great development, and nervous system of children and, let's say, muscles are not developed. That's why children do not play, let's say, according to the music. And for example, from my let's say, pedagogical practice, it was like I let's say, clap one, let's say, this rhythmical pattern. I will show you. For example, pam, pam, pa, pa, pa. And this little child responded like that. And this means that their muscles are not yet developed. And that's why they have really problems with this let's say, responding and to be precise and to maintain the metrical and, let's say, tempo of music. So I like, Dubravka says, I like story about twins and music as a support for movement therapy. Is it applied in regular medical practice, and how? This I really don't know if this is used in the, let's say, medical practical ways. Maybe you could ask, I don't know, someone who is out of this area, who works on this area. I don't know exactly. I am not even aware, let's say, of some studies about this. I didn't read about it. Okay, these are 2 questions now. Are there any questions or comments about my, let's say, lecture? I would appreciate that. Thank you, Katarina, you too, that you were here today with us. Are there any questions, comments? Maybe you can share with us your maybe experiences. Now Anna, a question for Katarina Habe. Could you please share the link to the documentary about the development of musical language skills of a boy we saw during previous lectures? So Katarina Habe, I hope that she will do that for you. Thank you, Anna. Maybe you should, let's say, share your experiences with preschool children. How do you work with them? What are your experiences with this period? Or maybe if someone among you have some kind of experiences for this period from 1 to 3 years old, maybe there is some preschool teacher.
If I may interrupt, we have a question in the chat from Sunčica. So at what age are young children able to connect to the sound and the source, the sound to the source?
Yes, this is actually so much connected to, let's say, our incentives. This can happen very quickly, or if a child does not have any experience with that, this will happen later. But maybe at 5 and 6 year old, they will recognize the instrument, the sound of the instrument. Okay. Now I think
we have another question from Katarina Pograjc. Hello, I'm a kindergarten teacher, 2 to 3 years old, and I'm often in a dilemma. Children often show interest in some songs which are of their range or melodicity too difficult. Is it inappropriate to sing with them such songs? I think it is important to develop a child's positive motivation for singing.
Oh, that's great question. Thank you, Katarina. Yes, children really love to listen songs which are maybe too difficult for their age or their development due to the, let's say, vocal range or rhythmical pronunciation and so on. Maybe, yes, one thing is that maybe you as a preschool teacher, you sing and you interpret this kind of songs to them. Like this could be a part of music listening, and not like that we teach these little children to sing along with us. So yes, if these songs are too difficult, too demanding, it is, let's say, maybe a bit dangerous that we will not damage their, let's say, vocal apparatus and so on. So yes, we have to be aware in which way we will present this song. Will we learn our children this song, or we will just sing them this song and they will listen to us? So I think this is the most important. So if a child starts to sing along with us, okay, maybe he will not be precise in tone heights, rhythm, and so on. And we just leave him that he sing as he can, yes. But otherwise, to learn them, I think, to teach them, I think it's not a good idea. Okay. In which range it is safest? Yes.
Thank you. I have another question.
I saw here.
Please go ahead.
In which range? Yes. In which range? Moment. Now I lost it. In which range it is safest to sing with children, and in which age? Range. Actually, Anna, in which range? Vocal range is around, let's say, in this age, between E1 and A1. Let's say in this range, it is more appropriate to sing. And this is also, let's say, around 2 and 4 years old. This age is maybe appropriate. And Dubravka also asked, I noticed that the activity is easier with song. We have with wash song, going out, etc. I think parents should be encouraged to do that. Getting their attention is much deeper if you sing instead or of talk. Kids love and learn a lot through song. Yes, this is true. Actually, I also have once a conversation with preschool teachers, and they also said that they use songs as, let's say, a tool for overcome some, let's say, situation where children need to wait for a lunch or wait for be clothes to go out and so on. And they said to me that every time they start to sing, which means that really music as such has many benefits. You can use song in different, let's say, ways. Yes, and I think preschool teachers should also talk to parents and to notice, let's say, to announce them what is important, and that they can also sing at home, and what are the benefits if we are singing along with children at home environment. I agree with that.
I have another question. If you can maybe tell us where the result of the project for babies is published and whether it is also available in English.
Yes, I have this published. Actually, there are some of these articles. One was published by Nova Science. It was published by Janis Jerman, and the second one was also published in the same, let's say, publishing house, Nova Science, and we prepared this article together with Katarina Habe. But if you want, I can also send this, let's say, articles to you on your email. It is not a problem. If you are on the ResearchGate, you will find this article as well there. So yes, you will find it there. Okay. Some more question?
From Katarina Stekic. I'm a psychologist who'd like to do music and motor development research with preschool children. So I was wondering if perhaps you can share some struggles that you faced when working with preschool children. Do you have any advice for us who haven't worked with preschoolers in the context of music so far?
So music and motor development research. Now I do not recall some of this, but I wrote one of this article, but that one of some of the psychologists would have such a research. I do not remember. They mainly the studies focus on, let's say, responses to a child to the sound and music. Let's say motor responses, but in this way, I'm not aware of these studies. I'm really sorry for that.
Earlier we had a question. I like a story about twins and the music as a support for movement therapy. Is it applied in regular medical practice, and how? By Dubravka.
as I know, I'm not aware of this, that this would be a part of, let's say, medical therapy. Once I talked with one gynecologist, and she told me that in hospitals, when in a case of premature babies, that they give some, let's say, musical examples that little babies can listen. But I think that some kind of, let's say, didactic approaches in that way, that medical practice would, let's say, implement it, I'm not sure. I'm really not sure. I could say that I had an experience in 2008 when I tried to work with little babies, and I just asked for help, gynecologists and other, let's say, medical persons. They were not so, let's say, fond of this. So I do not feel that they really combine music with that kind of therapy. Okay. That was really, let's say, my imagination, what we can do with my little nephews and her mother. Okay. I think this. I hope I didn't miss some question.
The question about what the age of the children where we should start the clapping and stomping games, I'm not sure whether that was answered already by Anna Verbashki. So
yes, I do. Yes, I think I do. If not, please, Anna, raise your hand.
Okay.
Okay.
I have another question in the chat. First, a comment, maybe by Admira Osmanovic. This is an interesting and very stimulating lecture. I hope it will reach a lot of young parents and everyone who has contact with babies. And another question, do you have any experience or knowledge in music didactics and approach which challenged young children?
Music didactic approach, challenge. Not particularly that there will be one, let's say, didactic approach which will, let's say, involve a child into music making. No, I think it's really important how we as an adult, how I as a musician, let's say, perform this musical activity for a little baby, or let's say children in the entire preschool age. So this is, I think, the most important factor. So me as a teacher, me as a preschool teacher, so that I really think with some kind of interpretation, that I put some in dynamic, that I change the tempo, and I really, let's say, express my emotions through the singing. This is the most important. And as we can see in these two videos, an adult should implement all of these musical activities along with children, because he's a role model. Actually, he's a role model. He has to do everything with the children together. Otherwise, the results will not be better. We will not make a promotion in that. So this is, I think, this is the most important factor for all of us, to be aware that an adult is actually the one who brings the music to a child.
Another question in the chat.
Yes.
And some more questions in the question and answer section. But let's go to the chat first. By Igor Raunik. Later this year, a guest from Geneva will be with us, end of September. A workshop is planned with a researcher on early intervention with music in early age. So this is actually a comment. So there will be more material in this direction in the future seminars. To those that are interested in that. And I think actually that this has exhausted the questions so far. So if anyone has another question, they should type it now or raise their hand.
Thank you for this information, Igor. Any other questions? Okay, I think we came to the end. Sunčica already is here with us.
Yes, thank you. We are on time this time. So many thanks, Katarina, for this wonderful and enlightening lecture. And also thank you to all of you for partaking in this webinar. And let me invite you to join us again in a week in the 6th webinar from the cycle Sound and Music in Child Development next Tuesday. And I'm absolutely sure that this is actually what interests you as attendees the most. We will totally focus on the practical views of listening to sound and music by the 3- and 4-year-olds. And this will be provided to us by Katarina Zadnik in interviews with 2 experts, Sara Smrekar and Alenka Podboj. So on the behalf of the partnership of the BR project, supported by the Creative Europe program of the European Union, let me thank you so much once again for joining us tonight and hope to see you next week. Have a wonderful evening.